Okay, thank you. Good morning. This is Washington State Building Code Council full council meeting for October 17th, 2025. Can we please take roll?
Todd Bayerther,
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Shell Anderson, Scott Bastiani, Justin Bourgo,
Here.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Angela Hopt, Roger Haringa, Ty Menser,
Here.
Ben Omura,
Here.
Pete Reiki,
Here.
Katie Sheehan, Dan Young, Tom Young.
Here.
We are just at a quorum.
And I see Chel's online as well too.
Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I'm late.
You.
Okay, so we do have quorum.
Yeah, and then let me do the ex officio members. I'm sorry. Lauren Lathrop sent an email, said he had other meetings he had to go to, wouldn't be able to make it. Representative Alex Rammel. Representative Suzanne Schmidt. Senator Sharon Shoemake. Senator Shelley Short. Assistant Attorney General Derek Meyer-Bachdahl. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Roger Haringa texted me and said he probably won't make it in time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other introductions from the public? Go ahead, Ken.
Ken Brulette, representing the City of Seattle Fire Department.
Welcome.
Tim Atterbury, Associated General Contractors of Washington.
Thank you. Elizabeth,
Elizabeth Torsky, Cascade Natural Gas.
welcome. And I see Angela's here. Did you get that for the record?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Or was there anything else, Angela?
Just here. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. We will go to 2. Can we hear a motion to approve the agenda as shown?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ken has asked if we can move item 7 to the beginning to is that still the case, Ken?
Well, I'm scrolling through the attendees list and I do not see the person logged on. So, you know what? That's don't do it. So let's go ahead and go with the agenda as done. I don't see him logged on. So thanks for listening and trying.
Of course, appreciate it. Okay, any other proposed changes? Okay, the motion is to keep it as shown. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh,
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
As quick as any opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Item 3 is to review and approve the minutes from September 26th, I believe. As we're bringing those up on the screen, can we hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve is presented.
Tom?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Jill. We'll wait for the
Yes, don't.
no worries. As you're scrolling, any proposed edits?
That takes to the end.
Okay. I'm sorry, what was that?
That was the end of the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no proposed edits, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. And then we'll jump right into item 4, which is our first petition. So today we have a few petitions to hear.
Sorry, Todd, the item number 4 is public comment on not on the agenda.
As I said, agenda item number 4 is public comment not on the agenda. Is there anyone who'd like to address the council on something not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will go to item 5, which I believe is the petition.
Yes, correct. All right, while I'm popping that stuff open, we have a couple petitions before us today. The first one is on an existing emergency rule that we have in place. It's an update for the language on that emergency rule. This one was introduced at our last council meeting on the 26th. Since then, it's gone down to the MVPE committee, and at the last MVPE committee meeting, we discussed this particular petition, and the committee made a recommendation to recommend to the council to find emergency and to update the existing emergency rule to reflect these updates in the ASHRAE standards that we have here in the language proposal. And this is brought to us by Eric Vandermeer, the proponent of the first emergency rule, and also these two that we have on us today. And so, Eric, I'll turn it over to you if you want to say a few words.
Yes, thank you. Eric Bannermay representing Delta E Consulting. And so we've been tracking the ASHRAE 15 changes to which, as we've talked about in the past, is a continuous maintenance standard. And so it's been providing more favorable interpretations and revised addenda on how to enforce the provisions for A2L refrigerants. As we've discussed in the past, the current EPA, US EPA, and Washington State Department of Ecology phase down rules for refrigerants have us transitioning out of A1 refrigerants and into A2L refrigerants, which are mildly flammable. And so the model codes in ASHRAE 15 started out with pretty restrictive standards on how we can use that and how we can treat those systems, mostly for high probability mechanical systems, things like HVAC equipment that we're seeing in commercial buildings, specifically mini split heat pumps, for example, VRF heat pump systems, also air conditioning systems. And so these latest addenda that were, one of them, addenda A, was issued in at the end of May of 2025. So after the emergency rule was passed by the council at the beginning of this year in January and February. And then there's another addenda that went out for public review that provide kind of critical clarifications in how to install these VRF heat pump systems and heat recovery systems. So those addenda I'm proposing to incorporate into both the 2021 code and into the 2024 code. I guess this agenda item 5 is in relation to the 2021 code, and I can go into as much detail as the council wants on this topic, but that's kind of the preliminary. The preliminary intro is that the code language is coming from ASHRAE 15 committee, which is a consensus-based committee that's nationally vetted. And this has gone through the public review. Again, Addendum A has been formally issued. Addendum B has gone through 2 rounds of public comment and has not yet been issued formally. And so I can talk through the nuances of the different language here, but essentially ASHRAE is distinguishing between piping and continuous pipe and tube with joints and fittings that are pressure tested. And so this clarification is basically critical for us to be able to cost effectively install these systems. So by incorporating these revisions, we are substantially simplifying the construction of these systems, that we don't have to install the vertical piping in rated and vented shafts. We can now install that in either you can install it in a rated shaft, but then it doesn't have to be vented as long as it's just a continuous refrigerant pipe or tube, including the joints and connections of that. Essentially, you don't have any piping components. Piping is a defined term in ASHRAE 15, and piping includes things like branch controller boxes, but it also includes things like strainers or isolation valves or motorized stop valves, all the different components that could be in a piping system that have a higher probability of leakage. And so this distinguishing between piping and pipe is kind of crucial in how we can cost effectively install these systems with both A1 refrigerants and A2Ls based on the latest interpretations and addendum from the ASHRAE 15 committee. So I guess that's a preliminary introduction, and we can go into as much detail as the council wants here. So.
Thank you, Eric. Good summary, and thank you for bringing this forward. So the MVPE did review this. Tom or any other members, or Dustin, would you like to summarize what we did there, and then we can get into the nuances of the inside baseball of 21 versus 24 amendments. So go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. So I'm new to the council and new to the MVPE, and so but aging very quickly. I have kind of the, I guess, benefit or the perspective of kind of being less informed about this stuff. And so, we're pretty convinced about the merits for this. And I think maybe for the general understanding of the public and everyone else is why this should be like an emergency petition and why we should approve it. And I think we probably need Eric to expand on this, but it's kind of the frequency at which ASHRAE kind of updates is at a higher frequency than when we update our codes, and so we need to implement these best practices sooner.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Tom. I agree that was the recommendation from the committee, that the merits are sound. And if we can talk more about that, and then now I think we need to get into the process of, as an emergency amendment, what the council has to do in terms of established emergency basis and so forth. So Dustin, are you probably best positioned to propose that, please?
Yes, sir. And I got a message from Derek. He'll be joining us shortly. I don't see him online just yet. So we have two petitions before us today that are related to the same subject. For this one that we have before us now, this is the second time it's been at a council meeting. And so per our statutes in 1927, we're not allowed to take action on a petition at the meeting in which it's introduced. So this is our second meeting. We're looking to do two things here today. One is going to be find an emergency. I think that we have pretty well discussed that topic. As part of the finding of an emergency, we need a 2/3 vote of the council. We've talked about what that means in the past. And I do believe that still the way we are taking this one is that we need at least 10 council members, and we're talking voting members of the council, not necessarily the members present, 2/3 of that group. Is the way we need to establish the emergency nature of this petition request. Then the second part of this action for this petition would be to then adopt the updated language into the emergency rule. For that particular vote, we don't need the 2/3 vote of the council. We would just need a majority of the members present here today to vote in favor of the language for that emergency rule. So that's where we're at with this particular petition, and I'd like to save kind of explanation on the next one that is targeted for the 2024 code when we get to that agenda item.
Okay, well said, Dustin. If you're able, could you pull up the RCW? Because I think maybe we should give a little characterization to the council on the discussion of emergency basis on how the two options of paraphrasing life safety versus keeping well, I'm just going to wait for you. I'm not going to try to remember it because this was the nuance that we needed to remind ourselves of establishing an emergency basis.
I think I picked the wrong statute. Give me one moment here.
Okay, so just grounding ourselves, if you don't mind scrolling up one more time, just to bring everybody to the right RCW. So we've looked at this many times, 1927-032. We've been through this process recently, establish emergency basis by 2/3 first. The part that I needed to remind myself of was what can constitute that decision.
Yeah. And we got 2/3 of voting members. You know, we've had discussion on what that means across the council meetings, and you know, my read on that and what I feel the spirit of this provision brings to us is that it's intended to be 2/3 of all the council seats, not necessarily voting members in attendance.
Okay, I guess what I'm was pointing to here, Dustin, is go up a little bit, please, to C, and then A and B. I think oftentimes when we do emergency basis, we're thinking about the preservation of public health, safety, or general welfare. The committee discussed this and found that this is probably more aligned with the consistency.
Yes.
Okay, does everyone understand what we're asking there for the council to consider? Anyone remember the conversation differently from the committee meeting? Okay, I'll stop dwelling on it. Okay, with that, if it's the desire to consider this 2021 first before we get into discussion about a different process with 2024, the next step would be then to make a motion to establish that an emergency basis exists to consider this amendment.
Do you want to take public comment first, or before I get into a motion, or not?
We absolutely can. I was willing to take it after too, but I think, Eric, it's a good point to ask, even if just on the process, if everyone understands or has input.
And Dirk is with us now as well. So
okay.
Hi, everyone.
Dirk, do you disagree with anything we just said there, and maybe I said?
No, absolutely not. The statute, I think it speaks for itself with respect to the criteria that the council need to consider in making its determination as to whether an emergency exists. It tracks to the criteria in the Administrative Procedure Act for emergency rulemaking. And then as to Dustin's point with respect to the number of members who would need to meet that threshold of, you know, we've been down this road several times, and the practice of the council and its interpretation of the law has been that it includes all voting members for purposes of meeting that number.
Okay, thank you. Dan,
Yeah, because I read the words again and now I'm getting confused again, and I know we went over it last time. But it says the council approves of findings such that emergency basis exists by a 2/3 vote of the voting members. And we've determined that as all members. So we have to have 10. But then it says the approval of that emergency amendments require a majority vote of the voting members. But then we say that's only of the voting members present. But the words are exactly the same. And I just after reading them again, why are we going 2/3 of all members and then 2/3 of all present members. You see, it's just confusing to me. And Dirk, if you could help me wrap my head around it again, because I thought I had it last time. Then I'm reading it this time, and I don't see a difference in the way it is. It's just the way it's
Yeah,
written.
I'm happy to help, but
You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. I read it again and now I'm confused.
yeah, sure, Dan. Well, let's make sure folks aren't confused. I just want to make sure, Dustin, is what Dan said your understanding of the statute? I believe that what we've done in the past is the 2/3 vote of voting members for purposes of making the determination with respect to whether there's an emergency rule is all members. And then likewise, the approval of emergency amendments requires a majority vote of the voting members is 8 members, because that's the total number of voting members. Is that different than your understanding, Dustin?
It's not necessarily different than my understanding, but I do keying in on what Dan is saying. So the way I characterize this is that the 2/3 vote of voting members is 2/3 of all the council seats. That's how I've characterized that. And then what I then said was that the content of the emergency rule, the language that we're adopting, requires a majority vote. And I characterized that as a majority of the members present at the meeting. And so what Dan's pointing out is that the vote of voting members is the same in both of these sentences. And so if we're going to treat one as 2/3 of the full council seats, it should also be a majority of the council seats, or be only at the folks.
Okay, well, I missed that if you said it before, because I think Dan's interpretation is correct. That would be just like for any substantive change to the building codes, it would be a minimum of 8 members, which is a majority of all voting members, not just those present at the meeting.
Yeah, and so I agree with the reading as we're characterizing it now, and that is my mistake on the
Sorry
presentation.
for any confusion, Dan.
No, and that's why we talk.
Keep working through it, yeah.
And you know what? I thought if we wanted it different, we would have to change that, because the way they're written is exactly the same, and we'd have to change it. Requires a majority vote of the voting members present.
I should say something too, just for folks who are paying attention, for Eric and others. This specific language is relatively new, so that's why the council spent some time trying to work through it every time this question comes up. But the requirement that there be an 8-member minimum threshold for approving changes, final substantive changes to the building code, is longstanding. That's consistent with the understanding of the council's responsibilities.
Okay. Good question, Dan. Ty.
I know we've gone over this and I don't want to go any deeper than absolutely necessary, but can I just confirm that this is distinct from a more general situation where a majority of quorum can make decisions, and there's something about the way this is worded that distinguishes it. I remember us talking about that, but if you can just give, just because that would give me confidence that, we went through this, and because there has to be, generally speaking, it's a majority of a quorum makes decisions. So this is a unique situation, correct?
Yeah,
That's
Dustin,
correct.
do you want me to speak to that, or actually you've got it?
Yeah. So for certain actions that the council takes, we consider the entire board, not just the majority of the quorum. So for general decisions, like most of our actions, like the approval of the agenda today, majority of the quorum. For emergency rules, the 2/3 of the voting members, and then for any substantive updates. So when we do final adoption of the building codes, we have a special. We're not considering the quorum, we're considering the full board.
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on it, that's exactly right. And the reason we do that is because the statute directs us to in these circumstances. And there are just a discrete handful of instances in which that's necessary.
And then as we go to Katie, can you clarify, is that of the seats, which are 15, or the filled seats, which is 14 right now?
I would characterize it as the filled seats, but that doesn't change our numbers, because the majority of 14 is still 8. And then 2/3, I would say we can't go less than a whole body, so we would round up.
And that's consistent with the historical practice of the council and consistent, I think, with the statute, which says voting members, not positions of voting members.
So we have 12 council members here today?
No, we have 14 total.
14. Well, we have
14
14
total, but-
seats total, and then today we're missing one. We're missing two, so we got 12 in attendance here today by my last count.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to clarify. Thank
And the statute you're referring to is this one.
Correct.
So these are the only times that we need to worry about. It's not from the bylaws, it's from this statute.
There's another one too, and that's the approval of changes to the energy code, which
Oh, yeah.
have to meet that 2/3 voting member requirement to avoid having the legislature.
Okay, thank you.
Revisit it.
Hey, Dustin, it's Scott Bastiani. I'm sorry I'm late. I don't know if you saw that I joined.
I did not. So now we're with 13 members present today. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, and Scott, welcome. Are you up to speed on the vote we're going to take here to
Yeah.
establish emergency
Yeah,
basis?
yeah, I am.
Thank you. Okay, that was helpful. So we do not yet have a motion, but we can entertain a motion to establish emergency basis.
I'll move we establish an emergency basis for this petition.
Okay.
For making.
Thank you, Tom. Ben, did you want to raise a point before? That's okay.
Yeah, and I would second that motion too. I'm sorry
so
if
we'll
someone already did that.
Second that, and then
Yeah.
thank you, Ben. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, and yeah, I would definitely recommend that we find an emergency here, and I guess per the statute language, the original emergency rule proposal had the statement for the emergency basis. So I don't know if that would be helpful to show or reference, but it is on the council website, of course, for folks to look at. And yeah, for those reasons and the reasons mentioned today, definitely recommend finding an emergency in this case and hopefully approving the revised language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Dustin.
I just had one more thing that was mentioned at the MVPE committee meeting. So if we were comparing the language on the language proposal that we have for today's meeting, it only touches a couple of the sections that are included in the original emergency rule, and that is just updating those sections. So the remainder of that emergency rule language would stay the same. We're only looking at changes to that emergency rule language, and I think that's important so that if more language pops up, it's not a surprise to folks, or it's not new language popping up. It's just more than what's in the emergency documents we have right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And just to clarify, we're establishing an emergency basis based on the consistency clause in here. So that's the first step. If then we establish that, we can go to the content, and both recommendations were made by the committee, to my memory.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion on this?
Since we need a specific vote count, are we going to do a roll call vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have the seats record their vote. Okay, with that, let's take roll, please.
Todd Byerther.
No, we'll skip Todd for the moment.
Everybody. Sorry, Jay Arnold.
Yes.
Jill Anderson.
Aye.
Scott Bastiani.
Yes.
Justin Borgo.
Aye.
Tom Handy.
Aye.
Angela Hop.
Yes.
Ty Menser.
Aye.
Ben Omura.
Yes.
Pete Reiki.
Aye.
Katie Sheehan.
Aye.
Dan Young.
Aye.
And Tom Young.
Aye.
And that'll do it.
Okay, thank you. With that, we've established an emergency basis for this petition. Now let's get into the discussion on the merits. I think we've already covered most of that, but is there any other discussion or public input on the merits? Okay, seeing none, then we can entertain a motion to adopt the amendment.
Motion to adopt. Scott Bastiani.
Thank you, Scott.
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. So it's been moved and seconded that we adopt the amendment for the 2021 code. Any other deliberation? Okay, hearing none, let's take roll call, please.
Jay Arnold,
Aye.
Shell Anderson,
Aye.
Scott Bastiani,
Yes.
Justin Bourgo, Justin, Tom Handy,
Aye.
Angela Hopt,
Yes.
Ty Menzer,
Aye.
Ben Omura,
Yes.
Pete Reekey,
Aye.
Katie Sheehan,
Yes.
Dan Young,
Aye.
Tom Young,
Aye.
go back to Justin. Maybe he stepped away. Anyway, it's a majority, 9-0.
Okay, thank you. With your majority vote, then we've adopted that emergency amendment for the 2021 code. Thank you.
Justin here. Sorry about that. Aye.
Okay. Can we record that vote still, I assume?
Yep.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, with 10 votes, then we've established or adopted that amendment. Okay, thank you. Now let's move to the 2024 amendment.
All righty.
Okay, go ahead.
On this one, we introduced it at the last council meeting, deliberated at the MVPE committee meeting. The motion made at the MVPE committee was to for staff to recommend the proper pathway for this one to come forward, be it via the emergency rule process or via something else. So talking with Dirk since the MVPE committee meeting, we don't currently have a 2024 International Mechanical Code adopted. And the problem we're trying to solve here with the emergency rule is to update the proposal that mirrors what we just updated into the 2024 code. The language that's in the emergency rule that's on file right now is in a proposal for the mechanical code for the 2024 codes and won't have the benefit of this updated information. And so we're trying to get this updated information into the first iteration and publication of the 2024 codes. My thinking on this at this point is that it will be hard to find an emergency for a basis or emergency basis on a code that we don't have adopted yet and won't go into effect until November 1 of 2026 or potentially May 1 of 2027. And so my recommendation for the best way for this to come forward is as a public comment through the comment process on the 2024 code package after we file CR 102. And so if we're following that recommendation, the motion we'd be looking for is to deny the emergency finding, and then we would respond in writing that we will take the public comment on this particular topic moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Go ahead, Chell.
Yeah, I had a question. Thanks, Dustin. Would it be possible for us to simply add it to the CR 102?
I would say that yes.
CR 102 is not published yet, so could we just add it to the CR 102 since it's not officially out there and we voted on it in the past, we could vote on it again, potentially?
I think that is an option we could entertain as a council, but you know, we aren't affording this same opportunity to other proposals within that body of proposals. And so I think just to keep the playing field level, to let it come in as comment would be the most appropriate.
Okay, that sounds sensible. Thanks.
I think it does also. Does everyone understand the? So
Since the R102, but and following whatever process the council recommends. I wasn't sure how to handle this, but did want to start this discovered in the energy code review that preempt EPCA, and there was proposals submitted for those that haven't been reviewed yet for both the 2021 and 2024 codes. So this is definitely going to start to set precedents for the other codes and how this is going to be handled for things. And so if the direction of the council is that we're going to allow new content to be introduced via public comment, then we're going to have to maintain that consistency across the codes, or look it up, adopt changing policies and procedures to address how these things come up and how they're dealt with. So again, some of those energy code items and this are trying to be consistent with federal requirements as we learn about them or as things change. Some of these things are going to allow more flexibility and more cost-effective buildings. Other things might become more restrictive. So again, whatever the council recommends, just understand that precedence is being set for all the codes.
Well, I'm going to jump in for a second because I want to make sure that if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah. So I might be missing something, but I don't think there's anything here that is particularly precedent setting or unusual. The council during any code adoption cycle is required under the APA and does carefully review all the comments it receives and can make changes to the code proposals when filing the final rules. The Administrative Procedure Act creates a framework and some limitations as to how kind of far those changes can be made, right, to the proposed rules. But it's the reason we take comments, right, is so that we can make the proposal better. And I think it's in that spirit that Dustin is recommending that be the process that's followed here. Obviously, if there's other things that surface during the comment period that the council members think warrants making some changes to the proposed rules, you would want to consider doing that. But that's not unusual. That's just what rulemaking is.
And just to summarize, Eric, I think we are hearing probably concerned that there may be too short of a window after Sierra 102 or the public hearing, and maybe concerned that it's not being filed, so it's not published for consideration for public comment.
Well, I guess I'm recalling discussions in the past where comments can only be taken on the sections that are in the CR 102. So if we need to introduce a new section of the code that's not part of the CR 102 to close a gap, then how do we deal with that? Again, these are discussions that have happened in the past, and how we deal with this. So for example, if there was no code change proposal on a specific section, and now we find out that we're in violation of EPCA, is that a public comment, or does that need to be submitted as an emergency rule petition? The council bylaws do allow petitions for amendment at any point in time. They can be received, and then you have to decide whether it's an emergency or not. And so, inconsistent with, WAC 5104-020, they can be submitted at any time, and you have to decide how you're going to deal with them.
Okay, thank you. It's just that we're in the situation where we haven't adopted this yet, so we're trying to navigate that. Okay, thank you, Eric, for that. That's helpful. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I guess my question was related to, I mean, I remember, uh, I understand what you're saying, Derek, about the, you know, in the spirit of rulemaking, accepting public comment. But I think that Eric raises a really good point. And I mean, we spent a lot of time last time talking about what's a substantial change to the code, what is, you know, and so what if there is a substantial change to the proposal that needs to be fixed, not from a maybe like due to a like what we just did to clarify the code or to make it concurrent with state or federal law. Is that acceptable? What if it radically changes the?
Yeah. Okay. So really good question. And Eric, I appreciate your follow-up and clarification. I see why there would be a little bit more of some concerns here, and yeah, some potential perspective of this being precedent setting, given how you characterized it. Katie, you're exactly right. Under the Administrative Procedure Act, substantial changes to the CR 102 language would require another round of rulemaking on those discrete changes. The statute defines, APA defines what those changes, kind of what the standard is for that. And you know, always inject some legal risk if we go down that path. Agencies are generally pretty hesitant to substantially change the rules or the rule proposal for that reason. The APA provides some constraints. So I guess my response would be we'd have to see what the actual proposal is. I mean, one thing that we know right now, and I think Eric is agreeing with it, is that we can't accept an emergency rule to change language that doesn't exist, right? So he's trying to solve the problem of what to do in the future on this. Considering it during the rulemaking process is one potential solution, but yeah, then we would need to give some consideration as to whether it's something that actually can be adopted after the fact. If the council concludes that it's not, then there are other pathways. You can adopt an emergency rule potentially at that time. You could potentially engage in some off-cycle rulemaking if it's appropriate. As I said, the statute allows pathways to do it. It's just this current solution isn't the right one.
So just a quick follow-up, that there's no chance, given that we've pushed back the timeline, and I guess this would be, I don't know if it's legally possible or if there's any time, but like we couldn't just refile the CR 102 with that correction?
So we haven't filed the CR 102 yet. The correction could be included in the CR 102, but my main point there is that we're not allowing these changes for all the proposals going through, but it is it's appropriate and possible to file CR 102 with an update. It's just we don't have as much background on this particular update as we do for the rest of the stuff going into CR 102. I mean, we have lots of discussion, you know, and I think that we aren't arguing the fact that there's an emergent situation for the 2021, and we just want to make sure that carries over into the 2024 in the smoothest way possible. If we have an emergency rule, I'm not sure even how we'd file an emergency rule on a code that's not adopted yet. We'd have implementation dates that are getting all kinds of wonky, and we might have to continue filing that with some interesting, you know, implementation dates and things like that. It'd be a little bit more confusing, I think, for somebody trying to navigate the WAC to see this come down, and then to follow up with additional rulemaking down the road would be difficult. Right now, we have a proposal for the 2024 code in, and we do, you know, I hear the point that if we don't have an amendment, how do we do public comment on an amendment that we don't have? But I think that this is the most appropriate way for this particular change moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
I guess if I could say somewhat, just to follow up on that. I guess where the gap is right now is in WAC 5104.020 that only allows you to item 2 only allows you to accept and consider petitions for emergency rules. That's all that it allows you to do. And so you can only turn, as I'm rereading that section, you can only turn this into an emergency rule right now. You cannot, put it into the CR 102 because it missed the timeline for that. So what needs to change is WAC 020 to allow you more flexibility in how you deal with these situations potentially moving forward.
Yeah, Todd, can I say something about that?
Yeah, of course.
So,
Yeah.
so I think that's right, Eric, that the WAC and the statute really anticipates that petitions should be that are outside of the statewide petition period, right, which has ended. That they would be petitions for emergency rulemaking. And this is a use case that's going to shows maybe the limitations of it, but there are trade-offs, right? I mean, I don't think the council's in a position where it wants to receive a whole bunch of petitions after accepting the CR 102 or directing staff to file the CR 102 and then get a bunch of petitions that say, oh, you need to make this change and this change. I'm not suggesting that that's what's happening here, but that potentially administratively is a risk. And so if we're going to make any changes going forward, we need to balance out that potential risk. I would encourage folks, though, if they do think that there are things that aren't in the code that should be in the code, that's what the comment period is for. And I wouldn't encourage members of the public to feel constrained to only offer comments on the specific text within the CR 102. If the council missed something, they need to know. And the rulemaking process and the comment period is intended to help facilitate that.
Okay.
And I'll note that in Eric's deep experience on the council in the past, before that statute changed, I do remember that we use off-cycle rulemaking during this kind of in-between period, which I think is an option that we've established is taken off the table now in the recent changes to statute. So it is kind of a new situation for us as a council. So please, everyone, participate and bear with us as we navigate this. Okay, thank you. Let's go to Ben.
Thanks, Todd. I guess, Dustin, looking at the schedule, the CR 102 filing date is going to be in February, correct?
Correct.
And so I guess assuming this as well as potentially other substantive public comment would be referred at that time, I guess would it make sense for the council to review any substantive comments and direct them to the appropriate tags for additional review prior to the hearing period in March?
We could definitely do that, yes.
As a way to help, like if there's something that's not editorial or requires additional scrutiny, as I think we've done in the past for other code sections. I don't know, that might be a way of providing additional review and ability for public discussion and discourse as needed.
Okay. Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you. Tom.
Yeah, I'm just still back on that emergency rule thing. When I read it, it seems to me that an emergency rule kind of would inject whatever it is into the process as depending on where it is in the process. It says the code, but even if it's proposed code language, it seems like getting it in ahead of time, and I can understand, what Dirk said about, well, we don't want to end up getting a whole bunch of these things like this. Well, we don't, but we can deny them too. By the same token, we could get a whole bunch of these things during public comment and have it effectively be the same, as far as the process goes, So I guess what my question is, does the emergency rule process only deal with code that is in effect, or does it inject a petition into the process at whatever state it may be?
I think the latter is what we would like to see, but I think in reality, and correct me if I'm wrong, the WACs overwrite themselves every time they're adopted. So this WAC doesn't yet exist, is how I understand it.
I think Todd, do you mind if I jump in?
Please, yeah.
Tom, that's a sophisticated question. Administratively, what Todd said is exactly right. So an emergency route is designed to essentially write over an existing or create new code language or rule language, right? Now it is true, and we haven't talked about this, emergency rules go into, under the APA, emergency rules go into effect on the date that they're filed, but can have a later date. So theoretically, an agency could adopt an emergency rule to go into effect 3 months down the road. That doesn't make a ton of sense because if you're going to make a determination of whether something is an emergency, predicting what the world looks like 3 months down the road doesn't necessarily, track. But there is a pathway to kind of delay the effective date of an emergency rule. Generally, that's, to have it be in effect when an existing emergency rule would expire. Here, given the fact that the current 2021 code already has an emergency rule in effect that's being extended, it's just it doesn't really quite line up. And what you're hearing is along with Eric and me and these questions that we're getting, Tom, is kind of us struggling to figure out the right way to address this type of situation given where we're at. I think there are some options, and I guess my recommendation would be to pursue it through the CR 102 rulemaking option, but definitely open to ideas of other ways of doing it too.
There. Thank you, Derek and Tom. I have an idea, but let's go to Chell and Katie first.
Yeah, I can't imagine this is an emergency because it's not in effect yet. So I guess I would, and if it's possible to put this in as a CR 102 comment, I feel like that's the best path. So I think we've heard from lots of people on this, and I'm ready to make a motion, but I'll defer to Katie since you have your hand up.
Thank you. Just really quick, I feel like we're like emergency is, we're kind of defaulting to the first reason, but if we know that it's already in not violation, but if we know that there's another that we have to correlate it to a federal law, I do think that you could, or a state law, you could put it in the future and make a motion to put it to find an emergency in the future, because it's like we already know that it will already be in violation of what has already happened. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm fine. If Chell has a motion ready, I'm fine with going forward with this, but
yeah,
just to make that point.
Thank you, Katie. And Chell, can I jump in real quick and then get for the motion? Yeah, I think the word there, Katie, is that consistency clause that we're anticipating that, we know that. I think what I'm hearing is we are probably going down the path to use the comment period. What I would suggest is that those comments can come from anyone, including, I would argue, the council and or any of the work we do here, and we're encouraging others in this process to work now on amendments to the CR 102 or comments to the CR 102. There's a couple of amendments that have been out there that we want to take this time to bring things together. So I wonder if there's also an opportunity for correlation to establish that consistency, that we're anticipating this is where it's going to go, and we can help with council and external public input to develop that, to submit it when we hit that hearing and comment period after filing. So we haven't, because we still have correlation to do across other aspects of the code. Okay, Chell.
Yeah, I think we have plenty of time to find an emergency before this code goes into effect if the CR 102 process doesn't work for this petition. So I'm making a motion that we do not find an emergency in this case.
I second it. This is Dan.
Okay, so it's been moving second to not find it. We're gonna do it in the negative. Is that the way we want to do it?
Well, if somebody needs to make a motion, you can't. It has to be negative, I think, right?
I'm just asking, what's the cleanest way to do this to
You're gonna have
establish?
to figure out the math now.
The alternative would be to make it in the affirmative and not.
Or deny the petition for an emergency amendment. I guess, would that be the appropriate motion?
You maybe a motion to for the vote of the members to determine whether there is an emergency, and then allow them to say yes or no.
That was my question, is just make the motion in the affirmative and.
My
Shell doesn't want to make the
We've
motion.
been in this situation, Shell, before. I know you.
my reading of Robert's rules is that I think you have to vote for your motion. I think you're supposed to make motions that you are willing to vote for, and that would not be a motion I would vote for.
Okay.
So I think motion to deny the petition and not find an emergency would be my motion.
And
Well, that was
I'll
something
second that
about
too.
Okay. You made a different motion there, right?
Well, it's to both deny the petition and not find an emergency. And functionally, I think it does the same thing.
The effect of the denial would be to determine that, make a finding that there's no emergency.
Okay. So an I vote is to deny and not find an emergency. Okay. Any other discussion? Any public input? Just one last time. Okay, with that, let's take roll, please.
Jay Arnold,
Aye.
Shell Anderson,
Yes.
Scott Bastiani,
Yes.
Justin Borgo,
Yes.
Tom Handy,
Aye.
Angela Haupt, Ty Menzer,
Aye.
Ben O'Mara,
Yes.
Pete Reiki,
Aye.
Katie Sheehan,
As a director.
pardon me,
I think
Katie
that's
Sheehan,
aye.
Sorry.
Dan Young,
Aye.
and Tom Young.
Aye.
And back to Justin.
I think that was
Oh,
Angela.
Angela. Sorry, it was Angela. Is she gone?
Mm,
I know she was traveling and I don't see her. Okay,
I'm not seeing her online.
so that passes.
Okay. So with your votes, the council has established that emergency basis does not exist on the 2024 amendment. Shell, do you have a follow-on?
Yeah, my some brief research suggests that you can make a motion and vote against it, but you're not supposed to speak against the motion.
Okay. Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
No, thank you. I didn't know, and I know we've been here before, so thank you. Okay. Anything else on this topic?
So as part of our compliance with the APA on this one, so we've denied the petition, but we should also prime this up for how we're responding to the concerns raised by the petitioner. That's another part of this one. And so if we're seeking public comment on that one, I think that would be something we need to affirm here. As this will help me draft the official letter that I'm sending out in response to these petitions.
And Dustin, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick, this isn't necessarily something the council's taken a vote on in the past, what the reasons were. Often what Dustin will do, so just by way of background, folks, the APA requires that if there is a denial of a petition for rulemaking, the agency has to explain to the petitioner what the basis for was there, and if there is an alternative route. This isn't quoting the statute, but essentially it says what alternative route is you can go through to get to the result. You have to identify that. So that's what Dustin's talking about right now. In the past, Dustin has written, thanks, you're going to go now to the statute so you can see exactly how I was wrong on it. But I mean, in the past, Dustin and his predecessors have kind of collated the comments that were made during the meeting to kind of identify what those are. So further conversations about that would be appropriate, but I don't know if I would advise that you need to take a vote specifically on that issue.
I would agree.
Okay, so we'll do both council and public input. Ken, go ahead.
So just, I can make sure I understand this and maybe Eric already knows this, or I don't know it, is you just established an emergency for the 2021. It gets published as these are WAC changes, but it won't necessarily get onto the WAC website. My question is, there's a time period that's going to expire. Does Eric have to come back and propose it, or will staff automatically get this renewed so it doesn't fall through the cracks like some other emergency rules accidentally have in the past that they weren't filed again, since we won't have a 24 code for a while? Does that make sense?
The answer is yes, the staff will automatically refile those. For instance, just last week on Thursday, this particular one for the 2021 was set to expire. Staff refiled that one to extend it another 120 days. And we are employing some new mechanisms here within the staff to keep track of that in a more efficient manner.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
But again, the limitation of the way the WAC's written, you don't really have the option to move it into a permanent rule if you want to, or could you move this in? Could you take these petitions, both the one from January and this one, and go out for a permanent rule with it if you want to?
We
Is
could.
that an option for the council?
That is, but we find ourselves hemmed in on when we do substantial updates to the code. We're kind of limited to the 1 year after implementation and must finish up within 18 months. So what was in the plan for this, the 2021 code was, since we had the update for the 2024 ongoing, and that was submitted via petition, was to just refile that emergency rule until the implementation date of the 2024 codes. And the mechanism we're using to allow that refiling of the emergency rule is the CR 101 for the 2024 codes, which is the permanent rulemaking process for that. So now that we have an update, we have a little bit of work to do on that, but we should be able to still follow that the same method, I believe, moving forward.
Thank you.
Getting tricky. Krista.
Just to clarify a little bit more, we can only refile the emergency rule if we are pursuing the rule as a permanent rule change. So in order to refile it, we have to be pursuing a permanent rule.
And the 2024 process counts?
Yes.
Okay. There's some new constraints, Erica.
So how does that relate to what you just did? That you've denied it for the 2024 code right now.
You denied it, Eric, because it's a petition for emergency rulemaking, and
yeah, okay.
But didn't deny moving forward with potentially adopting a permanent rule.
Okay, so we're just going to handle that through the public comment process.
Exactly.
So I don't want to cause the council a bunch of time responding to me on this. Can I just withdraw my petition and you don't have to do anything further on this?
Well, as counsel for the council, I can't provide advice to you, Eric, but I think I can say that if you were to reach out separately to Dustin and settle that out, it would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
I will say this: I don't think this has been a waste of time because it's helping to uncover maybe some gaps and uncertainty in how we adopt these things. So I think this is useful conversation.
Oh no, it's been helpful for me because I've been contemplating whether I need to do this for other things for the 2024 code, but it sounds like we want to handle this through public comment. So it's been very helpful, yes.
It's helpful, but to Derek's point, it is exactly what we've been going through. It's trying to better understand our new statutes and what we need to propose coming into both session and or that we can address in our policies and procedures going forward. So thank you for everything, especially since you bring so much background knowledge to this council. Okay, Jay.
Given that we're handling this during the public comment process, do we also need to provide direction to include this in the CR 102, given all the things that Katie and others have brought up? I get that it's an interesting precedent, but this is also different than other petitions that
Yeah.
theoretically might come up.
And Jay, that was my question in MVP is, I think similar is, are there things the council can do, you know, in terms of correlation or other things that we can file that information, make sure that it's out for public comment?
Well, I don't want folks to forget too about the expedited rulemaking options. So code correlations, if they're intended or designed to kind of fix minor errors or to align rules with federal statutes or state statutes, don't need to go through the notice and comment rulemaking procedure. There doesn't need to be the filing of a CR 102 or public comment. It can be done through expedited rulemaking. And expedited rulemaking is intended to address those very situations. That could potentially be, and this is one reason why I think putting this off is useful, because that might be the vehicle ultimately to make these sort of changes to the codes.
At least to get it filed at CR 102 potentially. Yeah. Okay, Ken.
One option, correct.
So Dirk, you had made a comment earlier with regards to this could be handled at the public comment instead of, you know, trying to get in CR 102 for items that the council just missed. And so you kind of opened up that for people making comments on things that aren't on the CR 102. I have plenty of things that I would love to bring up that the council missed, that we did not review. And so you're kind of opening the door for like these brand new topics, these brand new quote petitions that aren't petitions, that are going to be public comments that are going to turn into petitions. That's what I think Eric was trying to avoid, is trying to get language into the CR 102 now. So then, yeah, there'll just be public comments and the public will see it up front at the CR 102 versus just having a public comment. Then we, like you said, that short time period. So what you've done is now tell me, as somebody that I know I would love to present a whole thing on safety data sheets that's been developed, you know, statewide and stuff that needs to be in the fire code. That now I'm being told that, yep, I can just make a public comment on something that's not in the CR 102 and get it into the and get it into the rulemaking process. So hopefully that wasn't your intention. I'm not too sure if it was or not. So if you could clarify.
The public is entitled to make comments during the rulemaking process regarding the rules, the substantive rules. If they think the rules could be better, they're entitled to make that. The council doesn't need to make changes in response to the comments. They are required to address the comments through the concise explanatory statement and explain its position as to why it's adopting it or not adopting it. And I don't think the council is in a position, I'm certainly not in a position where I can advise or direct a member of the public, whether it's you, Ken, or anybody else, as to what you should be offering comments about regarding the codes.
Thanks, because I was always under the impression that people thought that they could only comment on the sections that were going to actually be amended. But now you're saying the entire whack is free game. So that's great to know.
Well, I mean, well, hold on a second. You know, people need to be judicious, right? I mean, if you're going to, if any member of the public were to comment on something that is off topic or irrelevant, or, you know, I certainly would hope they wouldn't do that, but folks are entitled to make comments regarding the codes.
Okay, but if it's but if it's within that scope of that whack, then okay, I think I'm going to make a big public comment. So thanks.
Okay. And we thought today was going to be easy. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm wondering if it would be easier to and more direct to direct staff to include the 2024 A2L refrigerant proposal as part of the CR 102. And I'm prepared to make a motion to do that.
Okay, I guess we need some help. Can we do that kind of action today?
I think that, technically we can. My whole point was that we don't offer this, I guess if other people wanted to make updates to the petitions that we received as part of the 2024 update, that they could, follow the same process to potentially do this that we're doing and get changes into the CR 102. And I guess once the CR 102 is filed, that's, ship has sailed. I think that we're not running afoul of any specific statutes, just that our main process for all these, this is a little bit of a departure from that main process. But I think that it's legal to do this. Yeah.
And the thing that I think we're in between is saying, Ken's comment of saying if we're going to take public comment to make changes, does that open up things versus Dustin's comment to say if we're going to accept petitions now in the CR 102 that weren't part of our original process, which is the tighter tighter process. And I think because of all the things we've talked about, the A2L refrigerants are a special case. And so I think it's, my view, cleaner to just say this is something we're asking for public comment on and include it in the batch of potential proposals.
Okay, let's go Tom and then Katie. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid, especially because this is a known correlation issue. If it were anything else, it might take a lot more discussion, but this is something we've already decided on. For the current code, it's going to be a known correlation issue in the upcoming code because it won't even, the upcoming code CR 102 will be in conflict with the emergency rule we just passed. So
okay.
I would agree with Jay on that.
Okay. Katie?
I also like that. I feel like it's cleaner in this situation, but I was remembering something from the committee meeting. Was there some concern that the rule isn't completely done yet? And and Eric, maybe we kind of decided that it wasn't going to change much anyway, but just to be like, that's something that came up, I feel like, but I don't know if it was this one or another.
So I believe that the ASHRAE document isn't 100% published yet, but it's been through, I think, 2 rounds of public comment and is, just like you said, is not anticipated to change much at that part. That was raised at the MVPE, but the consensus there was that there's not a lot of significant risk for change upon publication.
Yeah, so if I can comment, yeah, addendum, yeah, one of the addenda has not been issued yet. So I think what you're weighing is it better to get this stuff into the CR 102 so it goes out for full public comment? Obviously, if there was a change in that addenda that hasn't been issued, then that could obviously be picked up in public comment later if there was a word change or something. So you're really weighing, is it better to get this into the CR 102 and go out for public comment more transparently, or whether you want to just handle this through public comments at the CR 102 level?
And
I think you are still kind of hamstrung by the WAC 510402 or language, is it doesn't really allow you to accept petitions that are outside of the timelines for item 3. And so you probably want to look at that language again.
True, but wait, hold on. Eric, you mentioned that a few times, and Todd, I'm sorry. I know that I'm making this conversation longer than it needs to be.
Nope, that's what I need to do.
Eric's got me. He's got me going. My view and what I've advised before is that the council members aren't constrained to propose changes to the codes, or they're not limited to code making motions regarding changes to the codes by receiving a petition. I'm sorry, that was very poorly rated. But what I mean is, if the will of the council is to direct that the codes be changed, they don't need a petition in order to do that. So I think that that's part of what the council's trying to do right now, is figure out the right pathway forward to do that absent a petition, because there's not a petition now. It's been denied. I do have a question though regarding people are maybe this is a question for Jay. We're talking about making part of the CR 102. Is that a new proposed rule or something in the form, the CR 102 form, where you would say to the world, hey, be prepared to provide some comments regarding potentially this specific issue?
Well, I guess I'd be looking for some guidance on this to make sure that we've got some flexibility, given that the rule is somewhat in flux, but perhaps we could start with the language in the petition.
Actually adding the language that was recommended in the petition into the proposed language filed with the CR 102?
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll just comment, you know, past CR 102s have had options. The council has had option A versus option B to get public input. I mean, the CR 102 could be written in a way that you want to get public comment on this potential amendment, and that you could make a motion to do that, I think is what Dirk is saying, excuse me. You know, you have the ability to make a motion to move this into the CR 102. You could structure how you want to do that.
Okay.
Legally, I agree with that. You know, whether or not you think it's the right way of doing it, it's good policy, and otherwise defer to the council.
Okay, and we have other cases like that too now. Okay, we have 3 different conversations going on at once here. I want to address Katie first. I think what you were asking, and I agree, but we should clarify that this is not a reference to a standard that hasn't been adopted or issued yet. This is language that is coming out of that soon to be adopted. Is that correct, Eric? Because there's a distinction there.
Correct. Addendum A has been issued. Addendum B has gone through 2 rounds of public comment and is not yet issued by the ASHRAE 15 committee.
But do these amendments, do they reference them, or do they bring language into code from those?
We're using that language as the example, as the text to apply to the IMC provisions that are similar.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. We're making a code amendment here, not referencing a future document.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're taking language from ASHRAE 15 and modifying it and applying it to the IMC sections. And these are provisions that are covered both in ASHRAE 15 and in the IMC, and we're trying to get them to correlate with each other.
Correct.
And Chapter 11 of the Mechanical Code requires you to comply with Chapter 11 and with Chapter 15. And so, you know, when there's a discrepancy between these, Chapter 11 prevails according to the code language and according to the opinion that the council issued last year. And so this is essentially hamstringing jurisdictions. You know, for the 2021 code, it's hamstringing jurisdictions from being able to, you know, we're having to file code alternate requests on every project right now. But
yeah,
anyway, so
that's what I want to unpack. Thank you, Eric.
Well, and I feel like if we were to follow CR 102, do what Jay's proposing, then if there were changes to that language, even though we don't expect them, that could get resolved at public comment as well.
Before adoption. I think that's Eric's point. Yep.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. Ken.
So I'm looking at the CR 102. It was filed for the 2021 code. On the left-hand side are the WACs, all of the existing WACs. We will have an existing WAC for the 2021 code for this subject. It makes sense to put that into your attachment A for your CR 102, and then proposed any language, again, like Dirk was saying, the council can put in that language in the proposal without a petition. So show the 2021 language and any proposed changes to it, because you will have an existing WAC in the 2021. Even though it's an emergency rule, it's still a WAC. So that's my
Okay.
comment.
I think that aligns. Okay, everyone understands? So now we're back to Jay. Would you like to make your motion?
Yes, I would like to move that we include the proposal that was in the denied petition for A2L refrigerants in the CR 102 for the 2024 code.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Was that Dan?
Tom.
Tom, sorry. Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Jay and Tom. We're going to open up public comment if anyone would like to speak more on this. Okay, any other deliberation from the council? Oh, go ahead, Eric.
My understanding of the motion, yes, this would be the CR 102 for the mechanical code specifically. So that's all I wanted to clarify.
Okay, anyone disagree? No, that's the intent. Okay.
And it would be alternate language, is that correct? There'd be two options.
That's not how I was taking this one. I was taking this as a update to the proposal that we have in there, and to just bring this in as the 2024 proposal. But I'm open to filing it
That's
as
good
an
to clarify because I didn't understand that. So
That's how I
what you're asking,
understood.
Michelle? It is. Jay?
Yeah, I think it's just a proposal. I don't know what the alternate is what, no action?
The options I think that we're discussing potentially including would be an option to file the proposal as it is right now, and then include an option with the updated language, and then people could look at both of those. But I think the clearer thing to do would be to just bring one version and don't have an option on it, and just update the petition to reflect the changes that we've got here in the emergency rule for 2021. That was the whole intent of that petition for the 2024, is to bring that in as permanent rule. And so I think having an option to say we maybe do or don't want to do that would be confusing. And I think bringing in a 2024, just one option there and getting comment on that would be best.
And my second was to do just that.
Okay.
Just to include it.
It makes a lot of sense. Okay, as long as everyone understands that. Let's just try to take a verbal vote.
Do we need a certain number of votes because it's a CR 102?
No, the certain number of votes comes in at final adoption.
So this is majority.
Okay. Just majority.
Yep.
Todd, could you clarify the motion again? It was a
I'll based on my notes, I had said the motion is to include the 2024 IMC A2L petition language in the 2024 IMC CR 102.
Thanks.
Okay, I think that's clear. Thank you. Okay, verbal vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, are there any opposed? Okay, we will count that as unanimous, and with those votes, then we will amend the CR 102 filing. Eric.
I guess I don't want to. I don't know how to say it. I guess if there's something like this that we find in the future, how are we supposed to submit it to the council would be the question going forward, I guess, is what would be helpful for the public to understand. So it's not submitted as a petition that you have to design, or is that the route? And anyways, so I don't know that you can answer that question now, but that's maybe something to think about.
Well, I think that this, if you don't mind me saying, Todd, I think that this has demonstrated that there's a, I mean, part of the issue here, of course, is there's been a delay in the filing of the CR 102, right? So there's a little bit more time to maybe find these types of surface these types of issues. I mean, ordinarily, Eric, of course, these types of issues would come in through the statewide petition process. The tags would consider, and it would be done during the on-cycle rulemaking process. Insofar as there are sort of what I'd call, I don't know if this is fair, Eric, last minute sort of requested changes to the CR 102 language. I think we've demonstrated today that the council can take a vote to make those changes. That's proper, but I would recommend having some clarity going forward on how to handle those types of, I'll call them last minute requests. Probably not the right way of characterizing it, but I'll call it that, would be helpful.
I agree, and we're going to throw it to Tom because I think this is already on our list and likely will be discussed in the legislative committee also to talk about statute, but also then roll into policy and procedure. So, Tom.
Yeah, I think what cleared it up for me is because we just prior to that declared it as an emergency for the current code. It made only sense to follow through with adding it to the CR 102. Had both of those things not happened in that sequence, it probably would have led me to a different conclusion.
Yeah. Go ahead, Katie.
Right. I'll echo that, Tom. And I think that we've talked about a lot of options actually. So what we just did is one option, and then public comment is another option. I do appreciate the notice in this one because knowing that it is kind of it almost feels inevitable with the correlation issue. It helps me make I think a more clear decision. But the comment period is also available, as Dirk and Dustin suggested at the start. So
Yeah, I agree. I think the external petition pathway is a way to throw a lot of things into the river. I think the emergency is another way to throw in the river, and we just need to decide, are we swimming to shore or swimming to the rapids? And then the comment period is another one. So I think this was a good discussion and decision. So thank you, everyone. And Eric, yes, the legislative committee and other committees, we're going to be talking about this because we're trying to better understand this and then make recommendations both to the legislature and the council on how to streamline for next process. So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. It's 11:27. Ken, what's our status? Should we push right into?
It's fine with me, but if you guys need to take a break, take a break.
What's the will of the council?
I personally would like a 5-minute break.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go just 11:33, please.
can we just do, if we're gonna take a break, can we just do a little bit longer?
Yep. 11. Go ahead. What would you like, Katie?
Let's do 11:30. What'd you say? 11:35? Can we round it off?
11:35. Thanks.
Right.
Okay, welcome back. We'll continue and we'll monitor, make sure all council members are on before we take action. So item 7, please.
All righty, I almost started talking without turning myself back on. So,
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead, Justin.
Should we do a roll call?
Well, I just indicated that we will monitor, but I'm happy to if you call it. So let's take roll call, please.
Todd Bayreuther,
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Chell Anderson,
Here.
Scott Bastiani,
Here.
Dustin Borgo,
Here.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Angela Haupt, Roger
Yeah.
Ringa, Ty Menzer, Ben Omara,
Here.
Pete Reiki,
Here.
Katie Sheehan, Dan Young,
Here.
Tom Young.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dustin, go ahead, please.
Alrighty, so for this one, we discussed this at the BFRW committee last week, and we didn't have the language that we have for this meeting available just yet. So Ken worked with some folks, I think mostly himself, but he has some conversations with some folks to produce this language. So what you're seeing here on screen, black text is model code language. Red text is existing state amendment language. Anything that's struck through would be a proposed deletion, which I don't believe there is any in this proposal. Underlined text would be proposed additions, and highlighted text is for emphasis. So for the most part in 903.2.3, we have 3 exceptions in here, and Ken's options are to potentially add a 4th exception or some other sections that would be subsections to 903.2.3. Would add a 0.1 in there. And we have 903.2.3 and then 903.2.6.1 for I4. And these are these are the code sections in the International Building Code which deal with daycare type occupancies. And so the reason we're seeing this petition before us is in the 2024 session, a bill was passed. The number is escaping me, but it creates RCW 19.27.600. It talks about how the areas involved in child care centers in existing buildings should be calculated. In the legislative session, upon review of that particular bill, the position the council took was that no rulemaking would be needed for that change. And Ken is here today to tell us that there is confusion resulting from this bill, and that something should be done to reduce that confusion. And so with that, Ken, I'll turn it over to you. And you said you had another folks online that might have some more comments as well.
And Ken, just before you go, Dustin, can you just establish for the council that this is the first or second time this has been heard?
Oh, this will be the first time we're hearing this one, so we're not looking to take action. After we go to this one, we'll have a BFRW committee again next month. This will go back there, be a topic on that agenda, and then come back with some recommendations for the council to consider.
But it was first raised at BRFW.
Correct. Ken mentioned it at the last meeting, and I didn't have it on the agenda for that one, and so this is the introduction meeting for this petition.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, can you, Justin, just scroll down a little bit to the section 5. So just so everybody's aware, Justin, great. I mean, that was a perfect recap of everything. So that RCW 19.27.600 has caused confusion for spaces that are putting in these existing child care centers or in a child care center in an existing building. And it comes up to some terminology called fire area and the determination of that. So I put in an explanation in here. Hope everybody took the time to read it. But yes, it is something that is confusing. We're dealing with different ones in the city of Seattle right now. And my feeling is if the city of Seattle can't figure this out and how to apply it, I would be worried that other jurisdictions are having the same problem if they haven't already had to go along with this. I believe that the intent of this RCW was to allow childcare to happen in some existing buildings without having to create a separate fire barrier in between that new use and the existing use. But I've also gotten feedback from a member of the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals board that thought, no, the intention, we thought that there would be a separation. And that would mean that an existing building, if they had a room set up, they would now have to construct that room and put in a fire barrier so the occupant load of the other area would not be used. It would actually create a separate fire area. So that's the nuts of it. We really think that rulemaking needs to get done. That's the reason that I tried to come up with 3 different options. And yeah, Dustin, it was all me on last Friday after the BFRW, trying to put together some code language. And then I submitted to you around 5 o'clock on Friday, just trying to get something in. So that's it. So I'm hoping you guys are okay with moving this forward to the BFRW so we can discuss it in a more, what if scenario, if it passes or doesn't pass or whatever. But I just appreciate it being looked at for the first time.
Thank you, Ken. And I'll add, thank you for doing this work, Ken, and the BRFW asked for help with this. So just to clarify that it wasn't proposed language last time, we want to make sure the BRFW gives you proper cover, Ken. So
Yeah, and that makes sense because if the original petition that I put in was just ask for rules to be developed.
Right.
And so the BFRW just said, well, can you propose some rules? And so we threw something, or I threw something together. Now, it doesn't mean this is the language that might get tweaked, but it's just a starting point.
Yeah, thank you for
that. Ken, could you explain what the difference is on the different options you have here?
So option 1, let's go up to the E3 part. Go up to the E3.
You want to see the top of E3?
No, that's good. Just your option 1 there. So the option 1 was adding, like Dustin said, the extra exceptions. So it allows, if I had an E occupancy that it was put into a building, and it is separated for the table 508.4 of the building code, which means they're going to have to put up a wall, a fire barrier, should not be required to include the occupant load of the other occupancies in the fire area. So what that means is that the occupant load of just that area of the E, if they set it up that way and put a wall up, then yep, okay, we're only going to determine that occupant load, and then that's not going to kick in sprinklers because we're not going to include the occupant load of the other area. And people might just don't understand. A building the building itself is a fire area. So if I had a 15,000 square foot building and 10,000 of it was used for a church, and then 5,000 of it was used for another, it's still considered one fire area unless I provide a fire barrier to break those two areas up and separate them. So without that, you are including the overall occupant load into that fire area, because the state has amended Group E to say, hey, if the fire area has an occupant load of 51 or more, then you have to put sprinklers in. And that was becoming an issue when people were just trying to move into like a church area, and they were including the occupant load from the church area into this new daycare area, and they were requiring sprinklers when somebody would just maybe have 25, 30 kids in this daycare. They were including the additional occupant load to get them over 50 because it was part of the E fire area because there was not a separation. That would be option 1. If they provide it, a barrier, no problem, we're all good. Option 2 is basically saying the building code council makes a determination that if I have a child care center with an existing building, you do not have to provide a fire barrier to determine the occupant load of the fire area. You will just use whatever has been determined on the plans by the architect that this is the child care center. There would not be a barrier required. So you would not use the section in the building code that designates fire areas through the fire barrier process. And option 3 says, no, you need to have, if you put in a child care center, you do have to use a fire barrier to determine occupant load of the fire area. And so that was just my 2 different options. You either have to put a fire barrier in or you don't have to put a fire barrier in. Somebody has to make that determination because the RCW is kind of vague. It doesn't mention anything about a fire barrier. It doesn't mention anything about fire area. And so just trying to take that RCW and apply it to how the code is written without new rules is extremely difficult.
Okay. Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, thanks. Ken, I had a question for the first 2 exceptions to 903.2.3. What was the intent in including the portable school classrooms sections?
I don't have, I'm not going to get in. That's his existing WAC amendment. Existing WAC.
Okay.
That's all existing WAC. There's a whole history on the clusters of portables and how the schools were overcrowded and they needed to put portables up, and they didn't want to sprinkler them, that's a whole different discussion. That's just existing whack language now that, I mean, I got Sean Shepherd on the call from Seattle who was part of this years ago, but I don't, if you guys want to dive into that, we can.
Okay, and yeah, I see the formatting clarification there too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Anything else? Any other questions? Again, we're not taking action on this today, correct? So
There could be action, but it wouldn't be to find emergency. It might be direction for the BFRW or something like that.
right, thank you. Okay, it's marked for public comment, so any public comment? Okay, Ken, as the proponent, is there any specific action you'd like to see to direct the BFW or?
No, because my understanding then is at the next council meeting, you guys will then have this on the agenda again to determine if it is an emergency or not.
Correct, and then we would have to take action on amendment and choose an option or direct the BRFW to recommend an option.
Okay.
Beforehand. Go ahead, Katie. Oh, go ahead, Ken. If you had...
No, that's fine.
Well, I was just going to ask Ken, is there an option that is preferred, or are you just hoping for clarity?
Yeah, I'm hoping for clarity. I'm not going to get into the debate of which way to go. I just wanted clarity.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, I think as I'm reading this, I mean, exception 3 on the screen is some amount of relief for, it says daycare, but I assume it also refers to childcare. And I don't know why we'd use two different terms if they're the same thing. So is daycare and childcare the same thing? If so, we should probably use similar language.
Yeah, the reason I said childcare centers because that's what the RCW calls it out. So it was like new language in the RCW, so I better have new language in the WAC.
Yeah. Okay, that was kind of a minor comment, but it seems like we should figure that one out. I guess as an architect, I'm always trying to figure out, well, how would someone break this system and how would someone take advantage of it and put people in danger? And I guess if a child care center was on the 4th floor of a, unsprinklered existing building, somehow would that now with option 1, 2, or 3 be putting kids in more danger or something like that? That was the only thing that occurred to me. So as the BFRW considers this, I think, consider a variety of existing buildings. I think that the typical one is probably going to be a strip mall or a church or a, some other facility that is larger but has a smaller space for this. But there are other options where it's on the 3rd floor of something and maybe the building's unsprinkled and we don't want to give such an exception that lives are unnecessarily in danger. So that was my only comment.
Okay. Seeing no other comments, is it the will of the council to direct this to the BFW for a recommendation?
So moved.
Second, that's Dan.
Thank you, Chell and Dan. Any other discussion from the council? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with your votes, then we directed the BFW to make a recommendation, and then we'll put this on the agenda for the next full council meeting for determination of emergency basis and possible action on the amendment. Okay. Thank you for that, Ken. And go ahead, Chell.
I have a question, which is, if this is being directed by an RCW, then is the long-term process emergency rule and then permanent rule?
I think for this one, we could consider expedited rulemaking on this one. I know that the topic or sorry, the as we move forward with this one, this was for consistency with statute. And I believe that the expedited rulemaking process allows for us to make those changes outside of our main cycles for that purpose. If this was a little bit different, we might be, if we didn't have the RCW to look to for that clarification need, we'd probably be looking at emergency rule and then permanent rulemaking down the road.
Hey, can I jump in real quick on that? I think Dustin's probably right, although just a word of caution. Generally, expedited rulemaking is for really to align with the statute. If there's kind of more of a mechanical exercise, if there is some sort of discretionary policy making that's made in that alignment, if the council here has to make some calls as to what the right policy is, then it probably leans more into substantive rulemaking, which here would probably be the emergency rule and permanent rulemaking, if that's what's going on.
Okay.
Does that help, Chell, or did I just confuse everything?
I'm hoping Dustin understands and will guide us through this. I just wanted to clarify that because presumably, since this is an RCW directed change, there would be some permanent piece of whatever we do.
Yeah, regardless of whether that's through expedited rulemaking or CR 1023, I would certainly expect that it would become permanent.
Okay. That helps. Okay. Agenda item 8 is the side yard special committee composition.
So for this one, I have ideas on composition of the committee, but I didn't get something ready for this meeting to post because I think that there's still a good amount of question on how this committee is being put together, whether or not it's an ad hoc committee or a special council committee. And as far as the mission for this particular committee, we denied a petition earlier in the year to bring in a required dimension for side yard setbacks for, primary building entrances that emergency responders might have to access if they don't face the street, side yard, or public way. The committee's task is to, consider this topic and make a recommendation on if a change is needed, and be it via, some sort of emergent rulemaking or, couch it until the 2027 code cycle to make that clarification. The main reason I don't have a committee composition here is that we have some council members who expressed interest, and the question at hand was, are non-council members allowed to be included as members of this committee? I think that if we are running an ad hoc committee, that we would be beholden to have council members only. If we're running with a special council committee, we can appoint, this is my reading of this, that we could appoint, council members and members of the public to represent on that committee. I think that we have some council members that are occupying roles for the council, specifically the building code tag chair, the residential code tag chair, and I had another idea on that one as well, but I think that we have some specific roles that are being occupied right now by the council that would be good fits for input on this committee. But then also at the last time we discussed this, we talked about having stakeholder interest as well represented on the committee. So we're talking like building officials, fire officials, planning staff representatives, and also construction industry representatives. And so the main question is, can we form a committee that is composed of both council members and members of the public? And, I have ideas on that committee should probably be around, 7 to 8 members. And, what kind of recruitment process do we want for the non-council members that might occupy roles on that committee? And, as far as a process and mission for them. Make a recommendation to the council on if a change is needed, and decide if that time frame should be, we discuss this until we embark on the 2027 code cycle, or target a time before that beginning of that process to make a recommendation to the council. And so I'll kind of pause there for some conversation.
And thank you, Dustin. And I was a little disadvantaged when we were taking action on this. I was standing in the airport in Bangalore in my phone. But the intent when we first raised this in the, I want to say the BRFW, because if you remember, the council determined there was not emergency basis for this consideration, but recognized that this is something that we need to do some additional research and to understand the issue. So we directed the BRFW, and this was the BRFW's recommendation to propose this. My reading of special committee was that the chair of one of the standing committees or the chair of the council can form this, but we decided to bring it to the full council for discussion. I think during that discussion, there was a little confusion, or it led to an ad hoc committee recommendation, perhaps. And in my reading of our bylaws is that that's a council only committee. And I think my intent was to have a vehicle where we can do some independent research on this and document this for the council. I don't think the intent would be to establish a very robust voting structure and representation. It's simply bringing the subject matter experts as needed to make sure we have a good output of this, for this council. So that's the difference between ad hoc and special committee, council committee. But I think that's up for interpretation by the council and by our council.
Yeah, so I
Wait,
guess
is that council with an S or a C? I think you meant
that was you. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I haven't. I love being an attorney because I get to be paid to offer my opinions. Right, this is what I always wanted to do in my life, and I have one here, and the opinion aligns with Dustin's interpretation of the bylaws. I think there is a distinction. Bylaws intentionally distinguish special committees on the one hand and ad hoc committees. Ad hoc committees, by the terms, has to be composed of members of the council, but the council has pretty broad discretion to pull together a special committee if it feels it needs to do that in order to fulfill, as the bylaws says, its responsibilities. And nothing in the council bylaws suggests that that type of committee can't include members of the public or stakeholders or otherwise. Obviously, cannot be, well, I should say, obviously, in my view, they couldn't be empowered to make decisions on behalf of the council. It shouldn't. But if they're providing advice or recommendations, I think that's well within the authority of the bylaws and of the council.
Yeah, and I'll say on this subject matter, I mean, the intent is obviously to be inclusive and to collaborate with experts in the development codes, which we, for the most part, do not, except for our cities and counties representatives, we don't have representation specifically for the planning disciplines. So when we're trying to find harmony between development codes and building codes, that was the intent here, to have something more flexible to bring in those expertise. Okay. So Dustin, in this case, are you looking for more guidance from the council to form this, or?
I mean, so with that, I have a rough composition formed, which I have both members of council and members of public. And so if it's the will of the council, I can pop that up on screen and show what my thoughts are there. I've kind of spit them out. The one technical advisory group I didn't mention was the fire code technical advisory group. So we I think getting those three technical advisory groups together would be good. And I guess my question would be, how do we want to hold the recruitment for non-council members, or do we not want non-council members and just, form a small committee of council members and invite folks to come and discuss the topic at those committee meetings?
That was my intent, but I mean, I'm going to give it to the council, but it didn't intend to just form this and have a public meeting and quickly come to a discussion. But if the council feels there's more formality to recruitment and so forth, then we can do that. But
so I mean, with that, I would be okay running with, a specific number to target for council members and running an open public meeting to invite the appropriate stakeholders to the meeting. And so I would need, I think, a volunteer for chair for the committee, and then you know, a couple other volunteers. I don't want to just appoint the tag chairs as filling these roles on the committee. But I think that they do hold some special perspective in the topic discussion.
Okay. Well, I think we established already, and if not, I'm volunteering. Dan, obviously you're critical to this conversation. I think we established Jay was critical to this conversation representing cities. And then Tom, did you also volunteer, I think?
Yeah, I have Tom, Dan, and Todd as my volunteers from the last conversation.
Right.
Okay.
I'd be
So I
happy to be part of
volunteered.
it since it affects a lot of architecture as well.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
And my interest is, you know, I'm a builder, so I deal with a lot of the developing codes also. And you know, we have this housing kind of affordability issue, and you know, and while we have a lot of needs, you know, we still need to you know, help on the housing affordability matters.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think with the 5 members, I can compose that committee and we can set it up and maybe have a quick election at the first meeting to set a chair. Unless we have volunteers for that now.
I'd volunteer for chair.
Great, thank you, Dan. Okay. Go ahead, Katie.
And so would we then also kind of get a list of who we're inviting? Because I know that there's, like, to your point about, you know, having kind of overlap with planning and or are Jay and Tom representing that sort of continue, you know.
Yeah, and I'll just because City of Spokane was so active, we'll just
Oh yeah, and you
nominate Spencer Gardner, the planning director there. He was active in this and has already shown interest. So
okay, cool.
I'll publicly call him out here.
Okay, so with that, I'll create the committee. I'll plan on putting a new committee page on the website with that composition. And then Dan, do you have an idea when you'd like this committee to begin meeting?
I'm open for any time, really. I just got back today from a week-long conference, so my schedule's fairly open, so it's going to depend on the other people too.
Okay.
I just would request that Tuesday mornings are not good.
Okay. So being that like so the way I've been trying to organize the council business is council meetings and committee meetings run on Fridays, and then tag meetings are reserved for the Mondays through Thursdays. Currently we have a gap in the Fridays towards the end of the month. So would you be open to a meeting of this committee, say 1 p.m. till 2 p.m. on the 24th?
My schedule's open.
Okay, anybody else have any issues with that schedule?
I have something until 2 o'clock.
Can we start at 2 then, and or maybe 2:30 and run for 2 hours? I don't know if we'll need that much time, but okay. So
yeah, that Friday as of right now is open, so the quicker we figure it out.
okay, we'll set it for 2:30 until 4:30.
Okay.
And I'll try to get you guys a placeholder on your calendars here this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you. And all are welcome. Thank you for raising this.
All righty. I don't think that we need any special action by the council. The direction was given at the last council meeting to kind of create this one and frame a proposal for the operations. And so I will create this one with Tom Young, Dan, Todd, Jay, and Chell. We'll meet next Friday, and I'll be putting out some stuff for a new page on the website as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So our last item here is opinion request for the ramp landing.
All right. So we did discuss this one, not at the last BFRW committee meeting, but the one prior to that. And the reason this one didn't come up to the council meeting on the 26th was that was a special council meeting, and I wanted this to reduce that agenda volume and to bring it to a regular meeting. So we have a opinion request for an interpretation on cross slope on landings with ramps. Hold on, that's not the one I wanted to pop open. This is the actual request from City of Spokane Valley, pointing to these different sections. We had some discussion on this one, and the issue that is being painted is that the code is silent on cross slope for landings of ramps. We have code language that puts a limit on it for stairway landings. And one of the folks who spoke on this particular opinion request characterized a ramp that was installed in an existing home that, due to space constraints, needed to land on a driveway. And the driveway had a slope that exceeds the 2% that's required for stairway landings. And their issue is that if a landing that's nice and level is put in on a sloped driveway, it creates potential walk/trip hazards in the middle of the driveway. But let me get to our draft stuff here, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. So the question is it the intent of the Washington State Residential Code provisions to limit or address the maximum slope of a landing at the bottom of a ramp serving an adult family home? I would wager, or I would posit, that the adult family home characterization is not necessary for this particular opinion. If so, are the design parameters outlined in IRC 311.7.7 applicable to ramps as well as stairways? And the staff prepared answer on that one is no. The provisions of 311.7.7 are applicable to landings of stairways only, and that's just that characterization comes really just from the organization of the code. Ramps are in a different section than the stairs, and they don't address landing slope in the ramps section. And I, at the BFRW committee where this was spoken on, I believe that the agreement that we didn't necessarily reach, but the consensus in the room at the time of discussion was that the answer provided by staff is accurate per the code language, but that there should be an amendment made to bring cross slope requirements to ramp landings. But we don't have anything like that for the 2024 codes. And so that's likely something that'll come down through the 2027 code update.
Yeah, and I would characterize it the same way, that we felt this answer was technically correct. But also with opinions, we also want to be helpful to what is really being asked, and perhaps put a pathway in for how we would address this. I don't see the proponent or the we had good representation from the City of Spokane Valley on that last meeting. I thought it was pretty thorough, but we wanted to make sure all seats had a chance to weigh in on this issue.
And then the other proponent, Jim Profit, was one who was pretty vocal, expressing the need for one of his projects out there. And he's not available today. He said he might be able to be in here. That's not what I wanted to pop open. But he did send a letter here early this morning. And if it, with the will of the council, I can read this for you guys or leave it up for you guys to read. What would work best? I don't mind reading it.
Well, maybe just make it a little bigger, and we can scroll it while we're talking, please. Does everyone understand what this is addressing? I think that situation with the trying to transition into the driveway was pretty clear.
Yeah, I think though that the transition on a driveway slope is a self-imposed problem. not necessarily addressing the slope of landings at all ramps.
Yeah, this is not about the transition. This is specifically about the cross slope. Okay, thank you.
Well, I know this condition exists quite often, in just slope sidewalks, like in downtown Seattle. And you run a ramp out of a doorway and onto a sidewalk that's going downhill, and the ramp is going to slope, right? So putting a restriction on that would be a challenge.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, oh, go ahead, Peter.
Well, I'm wondering if, what code does actually cover how the slope of landing in a handicapped ADA accessible ramp does, what code covers that? Obviously the what they're mentioning here is not applicable really to ramps for ADA accessibility. So I'm not sure why they're making this referencing that particular chunk of code. Can anybody kind of give me some handle on that? So
I would say that the ICC A117 would probably have some stuff in there on the slopes of the landings of ramps. I'm digging into it right now as we speak, so maybe we could get that going, and I'll try to pop up a code provision here in just a moment.
Okay.
well, my problem here is that you oftentimes come across that transition zone between a ramp and the adjoining parking lot or driveway or whatever is oftentimes not flat, and you need an area to slow down on and to actually that transition is oftentimes quite bumpy. And so you need to be able to slow down before it, and then you need to be able to stop after you've made that transition. And that's kind of the key issue here is for me. If you have an assistant, then they, may well need, depending on the steepness of the ramp or the driveway, be able to turn so that you can adjust your angle and stop. But in this case, you may not be able to do that. So the importance of being able to stop at some point at the end of a ramp is critical.
Thank you, Peter. Let's
So this is the ICC A117 2017 edition. Ramps are covered by section 405, and cross slope, that's actual ramp cross slope there. The landing shall be compliant with 405.7, and landings of ramps for ADA purposes shall not have a slope steeper than 1 in 48, and shall comply with section 302, which I haven't had a chance to pop into yet.
Well, that sounds reasonable. Perhaps we should amend the opinion to include reference to this particular code, since the code they're actually referencing doesn't seem applicable.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
Katie, and then Jill.
Yeah, I was just going to add Angela, I don't think is here anymore, but she had also mentioned basically at the BRFRW, and this was, you're right, it was like 2 months ago, so it feels like a long time ago to remember, but she was talking about when people are going up and needing a place to rest as well.
Yes.
And so I like that idea of referencing the more, because and I forget the guy's name who was the main proponent, but he was really talking about the cross, that there was no cross This is I need a picture. I'm a visual person. But the cross slope issue was something that he brought up several times. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, and Chael, as you jump in here, I mean, can we make sure that everyone understands the definition of slope in that 1 to 48, which direction?
It's both directions because the cross slope for a ADA ramp is 1 to 48, and 1 to 48 is also the landing slope. So the landing can slope no more than 1 to 48 in any direction.
Any direction.
But my question is about if adult family homes are a private thing, then the ADA may not apply.
Mm.
And if the ADA does not apply, then what does apply? And I don't know the answer to that question.
And I'm trying to remember in the discussion with the city of Spokane Valley, whether that was part of the clarification, was to make sure that the actual code includes something.
So, and right now I'm talking about not what should be, but what is in the code. But ANSI 117, I love it. I always assume that applies to the same things the ADA applies to. But I haven't dived into exactly what if there's different things that applies to than the ADA, which is only for public facilities. And adult family homes are sometimes private facilities, is my understanding.
Okay. Peter, did you still have your hand up?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, council is, and we also have this open for public comment, so.
I'll also add that the ADA is a federal law. So whether you comply with code or not, the federal law still applies to you. And so ANSI 117 is a way of codifying the federal law. But just because you comply with 117, or just because you comply with the codes doesn't mean you inherently comply with the federal law. So there could be some space in there. I don't know.
Okay, so I think the question for the council is, again, this is asking about the residential code. So are we giving an opinion that's helpful in this? Is the technical answer that we've zeroed in on, but is there also an opinion that is helpful for jurisdictions in this matter? Or is it the opinion of the council that nothing more is needed?
I mean, personally, I would like to see the code require a flat area for landing and takeoff on any ramp with a 1 in 48 slope. That's a reasonable slope. You can maintain stability on that, but oftentimes that transition to a different slope, especially if it's at a different angle from your ramp. If your ramp is going, say, dropping down due north and your sideway or your driveway is then dropping down to the east, that provides a very tricky situation in which you have to change how you approach that, and you actually have to turn northwest to get the angle of slope down so you can stop and figure out where you're going to go down the driveway. And so, that having a flat spot at that bottom is really critical in making a judgment on what your next step is going to be in making that transition. As well as going up is not as dangerous, but going down can be particularly crucial. If you hit a small bump while trying to make this transition of different angles, you have to change the direction in your wheelchair. And that means that you can catch a front caster and throw yourself on the ground. I don't know in this case whether we have code that actually does that, but it seems like we don't. So I'm not sure we can do anything more than what our answer currently says. So my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Peter. Yep, remember, this is an opinion, so this is not enforceable, but it's best, we're trying to give guidance to jurisdiction. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think we've answered the question we can. I do think it's something that we need to address at our next opportunity, even if it is the 27 code, because the IRC says nothing on it. But my opinion is this answers the question, and we're showing where you can go to get more guidance. But I do think, and Dustin, I think you said we can't do it till the 27 now, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed. That's just my opinion.
If this is something that's required for the health, life safety, and welfare of Washingtonians, the council doesn't need an external petition to engage that emergency rule process. We could elect to do something on our own volition.
Okay.
I feel like the next step is to really determine whether or not this exists in the code, because everything I can see is it does. I mean, in some cases, I mean, you need a slope to basically just shed water, right? Like at the bottom, if there's a landing, you don't want it to be perfectly level necessarily, because you want like a 1/4 inch per foot to sort of drain it off, right? Like to get water off of it. So it would be good to know just exactly what the codes actually say. I believe that they're already addressing this.
Go ahead, Chuck.
R 311.8 does address ramps in the residential code, in the at least model code, but it does not address the slope of landings. I mean, it addresses the slope, but of the ramp, but not of the landings.
That's accurate.
It says landings are required, but it doesn't say what a landing is, and landing is not a defined term. So you could, I think, surmise that landing has the same meaning as 311.7.7, but it's not explicit that it has the same meaning as that.
Okay. So I think, again, our action today is on this opinion. So with that answer, 1 is the technical no. 311.7.7 does not address it, the stairways. And then the second part, I wonder if that should be modified to give more of an opinion. I think just the last part, the should be reference is there some better language that is best practice? And then off to the side, we've also established there's potentially a gap that should be addressed. That won't be part of the action today. Is that so? In that last one you've highlighted, is there some different language in the last 3 words should be referenced? Is it simply it is a reference, or it is the opinion of the council that's best practice? And then we need to go propose potential code amendment. Or is everyone happy with this, and this is what we should take action on today?
I'm not sure what the difference between should be referenced and what are you proposing we should be putting in instead of should be referenced?
No, if people are comfortable with that, then let's go with it. I'm at a
Right,
loss
or
for what would be better.
yeah, I mean, should be referenced is a little weak in its urging the code official to pay attention to the ICA 1117, but I guess it's okay. I
mean, we could put something like would govern.
Would govern, yeah, perhaps, yeah, a
Or
little bit
shall
more,
be referenced.
yeah, shall be referenced. So.
Okay. Well, I think it captures, well, my opinion, it captures it. But Let's give one more opportunity here for council for public input. Are we ready to take action on this? Okay, we'd have to entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the answer as written.
I second. This is Dan.
Okay, thank you, Peter and Dan. Any other council deliberation? Try a verbal vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with your votes, then this opinion is adopted. Okay, thank you, everyone. Do we have other business?
I have one item of other business. Give me one moment. So Angela Hopt was not available for our council meeting last week, and she submitted a letter in case she wasn't available to attend this one at this time. But she has some comments on the delay of the 2024 code adoption and implementation dates. I'll be pulling up a letter that she supplied for this one, and be happy to read it just to get the comments on the record.
Is the letter also posted?
It is not posted. I can definitely get it up online, but I did not post this when it came in early yesterday. So read the new 2024 code adoption schedule. Dear fellow council members of the council, although I was unable to attend the September 26th special council meeting, I would like to formally submit my position regarding the council's decisions made at that meeting concerning the state code adoption and implementation dates. First, I have no objection to moving the adoption date. It appears to be a necessary step given the current circumstances. I also understand that maintaining the implementation date of November 1st next year would be ideal for aligning with the 2027 code development cycle. However, by moving the adoption date without adjusting the implementation date accordingly, we are placing an undue burden on the very end users we serve. This decision creates significant challenges that undermine the intent of a smooth and effective code transition. Delaying adoption while maintaining the same implementation deadline significantly reduces the time available for education, training, and preparation. Designers, builders, and enforcement officials will have fewer opportunities to familiarize themselves with and consistently apply the new requirements, which increases the likelihood of confusion, project delays, and compliance errors. In addition, the condensed timeline between adoption and implementation dates will not allow sufficient time to produce the Washington State custom codes for publication and use. While it is true that this schedule mirrors past practice, it is important to note that the council previously voted to move the implementation date from July to November, specifically to accommodate the development of the Washington custom codes. For the 2021 cycle, WABO, using 15 volunteers, hired a hired consultant, and its executive director dedicated hundreds of hours over more than 6 months to complete the project. The only reason these codes were available in time for training and proper implementation was due to the delayed implementation date of March 2024. If the codes are not available at the time of implementation, enforcement will likely be inconsistent across jurisdictions, particularly with the energy codes. Without adequate time for designers and enforcement officials to receive training, they will not have the knowledge or tools needed to apply the new codes effectively and uniformly. In short, while I understand the motivations behind the schedule adjustments, maintaining the current implementation date without accounting for the delay in adoption will create unnecessary hardship for all stakeholders and ultimately weaken the effectiveness of the code adoption process. Delaying the decision to extend the implementation date further creates uncertainty and confusion for all end users. In my view, our focus should be on ensuring the successful completion and then rollout of the 2024 Washington codes before turning our attention to the 2027 cycle. Sincerely, Angela Hopt.
Okay, thank you, Justin. So I think your intent there was to read this into record.
Yep.
So post it after. Okay. Okay. Are there any comments? It's not on the agenda, but any comments? Whether you'd like to bring this forward back to the council? Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that, Dustin. See no other hands for business. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a happy Friday and a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take
Fellow
care.
members.
Thank you.